So as we started to analyze Ukraine, we started to break down the left's strategy in tearing down an entire country and molding it in line with their political ideology. The founders of the Fabian Society would be very, very impressed. It's a four-part strategy, and since Ukraine was so successful for them, we're going to use it as the case study. But I want you to know that I'm only using Ukraine as an example. This is happening all over the world, and I will show you how close it is to your house a little bit later. First, step one. Step one is the U.S. State Department and their proxies, like the National Endowment for Democracy and Freedom House, we just taught you about a few minutes ago. They identify, train, and fund civil society groups to mobilize. This is Civil Society 2.0 and operations like Alec Ross and his tech camps. It all began eerily enough on September 11th, 2012. And make no mistake, these programs are designed for one thing only: revolution. They operate to nurture chaos and collapse the regime. They are not even trying to hide that fact. Check out this quote from Alec Ross. Quote, "Some of the things that I spoke about when I came into the department, things like leaderless revolutions or virtual organizations, they might have been really edgy or a little off-center. But after Tunisia and Egypt, nobody is questioning the abstraction of leaderless revolutions. And after WikiLeaks, certainly everyone understands the power of virtual, globally distributed organizations." Now, if leaderless revolutions and leaderless organizations sound familiar, let me remind you, it's because that's what they say about Antifa. You can't go after Antifa. And you can't even say what Antifa is really for or against because they're a leaderless activist group. We can't shut down Occupy Wall Street because there is no leadership. No administration in their right mind that believed in the principles of this governing document called our Constitution, outside of Obama, Hillary, FDR, and Wilson, would ever condone anything like this. That's the work of a madman to destabilize the Western world. But that's why they built it to run separately within an already established organization like the State Department. Now, I'm not telling you that everyone in the State Department is bad. I am telling you there are people that will guard this with their life. These policies are being pursued right now as we speak, and they could give a flying crap who the president is. Again, the quote from Alec Ross, quote, "Instead of trying to create a new bureau, what we wanted to do was build a long-term institutional capacity. I leave feeling that the work has been fully institutionalized and the programs will live on." What was it the whistleblower's lawyer said? Don't worry, if one falls, two will rise to take its place. That's weird because that's kind of like Hydra. Don't worry, if you cut the head off of one, two heads will rise in its place. By the way, a little tip to Alec and Hillary and the State Department and George Soros from Captain America here. You're on the wrong side, guys. Maybe you should stop talking and acting like Hydra. Of course, Hydra, they were socialists because the Nazis were socialists. It's starting to become clear now, a little bit perhaps, why the U.S. ambassador in Ukraine was telling Ukrainian lawmakers to keep their hands off of Soros NGOs. One of the star witnesses for Adam Schiff in the impeachment is the former Ukrainian ambassador. It said that Trump and the new president of Ukraine spoke about this stuff in the July 25th phone call. They both said that they knew that the ambassador in Ukraine was in with dirty people with our State Department and Ukraine. Multiple sources verify that she told the prosecutor general in Ukraine to keep their hands off of the Soros NGO and various others with the State Department. Is it now a little more clear why she would have said that? Because Soros is working with the State Department. It's not criminal to them, it's the plan. It's also clear why a CIA analyst was involved in the U.S. aid money going to Ukraine. And now is a whistleblower against the president who is looking into that? Or maybe why the main witness in the impeachment are all from the State Department and diplomatic corps. And also, how the intelligence community and FBI has seemingly been operating on their own to bring down Trump. It's because, as Alec Ross said, this operation has now been, quote, institutionalized and will live on. Now, let's move to step two. The step two is when the opportunity emerges, the U.S. trained activists go into action. Now, I'll talk about the Arab Spring here in a bit, but the opportunity in the Middle East and North Africa was the Tunisian fruit vendor setting himself on fire. For Ukraine, it was when the former president decided to side with Russia over the European Union. That's when all the people that Alec Ross and the State Department had trained went into action on their cue. Because step three is the State Department and their proxies actively support the opposition. Well, this is going to make you laugh. It's so obvious. Under Obama, this was the actual administration policy. But now this happens regardless of the elected administration's policy by the institutionalized deep state. This institutionalized policy is what all the witnesses are talking about in the impeachment trial. Trump is a threat to the institutionalized policy that they have going. And they will not stop doing this policy, no matter what president says, no matter who the president is, unless this is revealed and the American people say, enough. Now, as activists and protesters and riots began to overtake the streets in Ukraine, here's Victoria Nuland. She's the Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and Eurasian Affairs. She traveled to the Ukraine 3 separate times during that uprising. In December 2013, she was even shown here handing out cookies to the revolutionary activist in the streets. The problem is sometimes the revolutionaries are good, sometimes the revolutionary is bad. It doesn't matter to this organization. That same month, I want to remind you, John McCain showed Obama's regime change policy was a bipartisan effort when he went to Ukraine to meet with the Ukrainian opposition. But let's not forget, this is the same John McCain that went over to Syria to meet with the terrorists who later became ISIS, when the administration used this very system to try to overthrow Assad. You want to know why we're there? This is why. The National Endowment for Democracy reported that it spent over $3 million of your tax money in Ukraine for this. In fact, here's the document. We'll be releasing it now on the internet. The question is, this report has been scrubbed from their official website. Why? Why was it scrubbed? And when will the people learn that the internet is forever? Their funding included more than $30,000 to George Soros' Open Society Foundation. Again, it begs the question, why is the U.S. government helping George Soros? What is their ultimate goal here? The answer to those questions lie in the final stage of this plan, which is step 4. Once regime change has occurred, infiltrate the new government with hand-picked civil society leaders. Now, the Assistant Secretary of State, Victoria Nuland, the one that was handing out the cookies, she was caught red-handed in a leaked phone conversation that we have, discussing how the government needed to manipulate who would become the next Ukrainian prime minister. And surprise, surprise, that man ended up getting the job. But even though they'd been publicly outed manipulating the affairs of a sovereign nation, they didn't stop. They doubled down. We already know that the State Department and the Obama administration as a whole were working to protect a George Soros-funded NGO called the Anti-Corruption Action Center. Soros and the Obama administration were specifically using them to target Ukraine's criminal justice system. Remember, the idea is to have a shadow justice system that could go after the guys who are standing in your way, good or bad, and to protect the people who are on your side. But the coordination didn't stop there. Newly released emails obtained by Freedom of Information Act request shows near weekly communication between Nuland and Soros. This is an email chain from June 1st, 2016, and it shows Soros setting up a call with Nuland for one of their scheduled updates. The next email chain, just a week later, initiated by Soros' organization, details how the State Department and Soros were actively working together on projects relating to Ukraine's criminal justice system. And I want you to look at this and see if you recognize any of the Oh, there's the name of the whistleblower. Isn't that crazy? It's like this guy had his hands into everything. The State Department, the NSC, the CIA, the DNC, all these operatives, Joe Biden and now George Soros. This is the reason why Adam Schiff and the Democrats are scared of naming the whistleblower, because his fingers are on everything here. There's no way this man can testify in an open forum. I just hope he's not feeling sad or suicidal. The president should put an order out to protect this man from those people in this deep state. They have to make sure that this man never testifies. Now, we're sending this document out right now, and this document is insane. This shows you how bold they are. This is the final piece that shows you the full extent of how embedded the State Department and George Soros were together in Ukraine.